a loving wife, Marg, founded Gladstone Stationery and Office Equipment, pouring their hard work and dedication into both the business supporting the local community. And their efforts built a highly successful and award-winning business in our own backyard, which they eventually sold in 2009 after 21 years in business operations. Another of his passions was sport, in particular golf, practicing daily, playing weekends and being an active member of our local Calliope Golf Club, enjoying golfing holidays with fellow couples. Interestingly, his cheerful nature and genuine interest upon his retirement, especially in people and people coming here, led him to spend 7 years driving a local taxi, where some of us around this table and many in our community would know he proudly enjoyed telling visitors all about what was going on in our region, especially taking those passengers up to Auckland Hill and showing his passion for the local area and its thriving industry for our region. Loved by all, our thoughts and deepest condolences are with his wife Meg and his family during this difficult time, and he will be forever holding a special place in our hearts. RIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd also like to pass on my condolences to the Morris family, because I used to actually work for Ed and Marg back in the office supplies back in the day, and they were wonderful people. I'd just like to pass on a message of condolence today to the family of Brian Stoneley. Brian sadly passed away recently on the 10th of March. Brian was born in Gladstone in 1943, where he spent all of his 81 years. Growing up right on Tank Street, right in front of the Billy Golding sawmill. He attended the Star of the School Primary School and went on to attend the Gladstone State High School. He also played for the local Valleys football team and represented Gladstone in school rugby league. He also went on to be the Valleys Junior Rugby League Committee and fundraising for them in Gladstone. He was the first diesel fitter apprentice to complete his training at the Gladstone Harbour Board, as it was known back then. Brian left school at 15 and worked on the Calypso Run to Southend and Farmers Point, a name familiar to the old Gladstone locals. As a lad, he had a great love of fishing and crabbing, often camping weekends at Curtis Island with his mates. Brian married the love of his life, Anne, and they had 3 sons. Together, they bought a block of land for £650 and built their cherished family holiday home at Southend over 40 years ago. They spent all their spare time there, and the locals affectionately knew Brian as the Pied Piper, often welcoming in the new year with his bagpipe music. Brian was a long-term member of the Gladstone Thistle Pipe Band and participated in many Easter parades, dawn services and Anzac marches, playing his beloved bagpipes. Always willing to help others, Brian volunteered at Blue Care in Gladstone after retiring, making lifelong friends who regularly met up for morning teas on a monthly basis. Brian will be deeply missed. He was a much-loved husband, father, local and a true friend to many. And may he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any further messages of condolence? Before we move on, I'd just like to briefly mention the passing of Tracy Bartlett. Her funeral is today at 10 a.m. in Calliope. Tracy's the daughter of Lynn and Ray, wife to Rob, mother to Tamara, Jake, Caitlin and Ty, and grandmother to many of her grandchildren. She's most well known in our local community for her amazing artwork and her very infectious smile. She's very popular local, and may she also rest in peace. Notices of prior conflicts of interest, councillors, do we have any? No, thank you. The mayoral statement on current issues. I'd like to start, of course, by thanking Janine Butler for her 27 plus years at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre and volunteering for the Combined Schools musical and of course the community musicals. She has since directed 21 community musicals. What an amazing effort. Either been involved as a director or as a stage manager in any one of those musicals. And we had a presentation for her at the end, the cast party at the end of her most recent musical, Mamma Mia, where we presented some gifts to Janine, and I thank you very much for her efforts for our community, and she'll be very much missed. We also named, I think I mentioned this last council meeting, we also named the the stage manager's desk, I think it's called, audio desk after her as well. We also had the Gladstone Engineering Alliance Workforce Future Industry Breakfast. It was held last Monday, and there was a huge attendance there, and I noticed in the gallery we have the chair with us as well, and also the groundbreaking ceremony for the Flinders Village Aged Care Facility happened, which is fantastic news for our region, particularly around Tannum Sands, which includes 104 aged care homes, and also when complete we'll also have 100 villas for retirement living as well. Fantastic facility, approved before COVID, which obviously took a bit of a slow down, but then now the groundbreaking ceremonies happened, and the facility is being constructed as we speak. The Central Queensland University Hydrogen Community Information Centre, or Hydrogen Central, is now open. I was there for the official opening on the Friday, and thank you, Councillor Patrick, for speaking on the Saturday as well, and Councillor McClintock for the Hydrogen Grand Prix, which all happens. There's been a bit of an energy week, and it hasn't ended there, because the Next Economy is hosting an energy transition update event this coming Thursday at Central Queensland University at 5 p.m, and that's a free event, but tickets need to be purchased for free, but online, so you can jump online and just to book your seat there. So there's plenty of, make sure you get your space. We have our community forum in Agnes Water next Saturday as well. Encourage the community to attend that. We have a citizenship ceremony this afternoon at the Entertainment Convention Centre, and of course the Yabobo Music Camp Out from the 8th to the 13th of April. There's more information on that event on the website and of course social media. And the Miriam Vale Rodeo is on April 12. Gates open at 6 for the junior rodeo, commencing at 8 a.m, and the open rodeo at 1 p.m. So you've got rodeos, you've got music campouts, and you've got energy transition and a citizenship ceremony. It's happening in the Gladstone region, as we all know. The next item before we move to our deputation, councillors, is G2.1, the confirmation of the general meeting minutes of the 18th of March. Mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Cameron. All in favour? That is carried. We have a deputation this morning from Elements Green, and I'll ask Toby Roberts, Australian Country Manager, to join us at the table, and he is supported by Patrice Brown from CQ Group, which are also, as I said, the chair of the Gladstone Engineering Alliance. Over to you, Toby.
Good morning, Mayor Matt Burnett. Thank you for having me, and fellow councillors and the executive members. So thank you for having me today. So I'm Toby Roberts. I'm the Country Director for Elements Green, and we are developing a exciting project called the Yarimbula Battery and PV Project, which is located south of Gladstone and just east of Borrowin. So just to give you an introduction on who we are, Elements Green is a subsidiary of a company called United Green. So it's a private company. It's owned by a single family. It's based in the UK, and it's got about 4,000 employees, does lots of different activities, coffee production, property development, a multitude of different industries that we participate in. Division of that business is called Elements Green, so it's the power development. We are active, you can see on the map on the screen there, across the UK, Italy, Germany, and now Australia. So it's a very large business. We've got about 80 employees spread across those jurisdictions. We've got about 13 gigawatts, so that's 13,000 megawatts of development projects currently under development. Focuses on batteries, and where land makes itself available, we target PV as well, but very much the focus for us at the moment is batteries. Which is a feature of our changing energy environment as we go. So to just give you a quick orientation of where the project is, so you can see I've got a couple of zoomed out maps there of Gladstone and the region. So Borrowin you can see on the map there. So we're basically directly east of Borrowin, out on the end of Red Hill Road. So it's a remote location, basically neighbouring onto the National Park to the east. So this is just a high-level view of what the project looks like. So it's a block of, we own the block of land, so Elements Green owns the block of land. It's about 2,800 hectares of land. Our proposed development is to build on less than half of that. And what I've just shown here is a layout of PV array and also the substation and the battery. So a feature of the site is that we have existing transmission lines that cross the site. So you can see them coming down the easement on the eastern side, so the western side, the left-hand side of the screen there. So they're existing transmission lines that PowerLink own. And our broad proposition is to do a cut-in into those lines that PowerLink will build a brand new substation on the site, have a battery located around that substation, and then the PV array spread out over the site. One of the features that I will mention there is just, you note the unusual shape of the layout of the PV array. So what we've done with the site is basically work with the features of the land that are there. So we're not trying to clear vegetation, we're not trying to build panels from fence to fence, as a lot of projects will try to do. As I said, we're building on less than half the land available to us. So it's a 666 megawatt battery with 2 hours of storage and a 696 megawatt PV array. So it is a very large project in the context of Australia, but is well received so far, both from the approvals through the environmental process, through PowerLink, certainly with the community engagement process that we've gone through so far. Our DA is in place at the moment, so it was approved by Gladstone Council back in 2018. So the project originally was the Rods Bay Solar Farm, which has been around for a little while. So Elements Green acquired the project in 2020, so only 5 short years ago. And so since that time, it was a 300 meg solar farm. It's been expanded into being the 666 meg battery and the 696 meg PV. One thing I will note there, so the current DA has a validity period out until August 2026 at the moment, and we're working through our approval process. And one of the things I did want to highlight this morning is we're working with the council, and an application has been made to get an extension on the timeframe for the validity of the DA. So in order for us to satisfy that DA, what we need to do is have the substation completely built and also have power being exported out through the grids to satisfy the requirements of the DA. So I'll come to some of the things we're working through at the moment from the approvals that we're waiting for, but that is a process that we've got underway at the moment with council. So this is just a summary of what I've just mentioned. So there's lots of figures on here which I won't read down through the screen, but as I mentioned, we've got key feature of the site. It's in a remote location, which is ideal. It's a very flat location, which makes it great for PV. It is well positioned from a transmission point of view, which makes it ideal for hosting the battery particularly, but also for the PV. It is near the demand centre of Gladstone, which again makes it ideal for what we're trying to develop. A feature you'll see on the map there is the shape of the PV array. So we've tried to work with the environmental features of the land that we've got. So as part of the EPBC, so the Environmental Protection Biodiversity application, the approval that we need from the federal government, we've shaped the PV array to basically offset ourselves back from the creeks. As you'll see, that's one of the features that's on the map, and then also work back from the treed areas that are on the site. So we have got some habitat areas on the site. So we've got a couple of species of gliders, we've got some squatter pigeons, and we've got some koalas. And so what we've been able to do is work ourselves back from those habitats, preserve them as part of the offset management plan that we have to feature as part of that environmental application. And so one of the commitments we'll be making as part of that environmental approval will be to manage those offsets on an ongoing basis. So it's to preserve and protect what's there. And certainly there's ground preparation that's required, but it's fairly minimal. And from the clearing that'll be required, it's from regrowth and fresh growth of trees, as opposed to anything that's remnant or protected. So very quickly, our time is limited, so I'll just run through quickly the status of where we're at with the project. So as I mentioned, our land it's owned outright from our point of view. So one of the features we have of the project that's an advantage for us is we don't have a land lease. We do have a good working relationship with our resident farmer, John Bell. Yes, former mayor, exactly right. we've got a working adjustment agreement with him. He's still got his cattle on our property at the moment, and so one of the things we'll be working on with him will be to continue that relationship once the project's built as well, so that we can continue having cattle on the property, because obviously that's a benefit for these sort of developments. It helps with weed control and usage of the land outside the PV array. And as I mentioned, our design has been put in place to try to fit in with what's there as opposed to trying to change what's there. So as you can see, the little bit more granulated view that's on the screen there now, you can see the layout of the PV arrays. But we don't shy away from it. It is a large project, and as I said, it gives us the flexibility to fit in with what's there. Our community engagement process has been a comprehensive process. So I've basically been in personal contact with all of our surrounding landholders. You can see the maps there showing the up in the centre there, the project site in the middle with our landholders around the property, and then on the bottom right shows the layout of Red Hill Road with all the neighbouring properties along there. So one of the key features of the project is the rebuild of Red Hill Road. So that's the first thing we need to do. So in order to get trucks out the site, we need to get them along Red Hill Road, over the couple of little causeways we've got around a couple of the sharp corners, so that road needs to be rebuilt. And so that's one of the key community benefits that will result from this project. So that's something that's been promised for a long time, the various reincarnations of this project, and that's certainly something that we want to get moving with. Mentioned there the GEA, so we've tried to plug into local community groups, so the GEA and the Chamber of Commerce as well, from the point of view of the procurement exercise that we'll need to go through. So obviously there's some large bits of capital that we need to buy for this. It won't be quite, but it'll almost $2 billion to build this project by the time we do. So one of the key benefits we're looking at is being able to keep as much of that financial benefit here, but make use of the local contractors. You know, Gladstone's very good at building big things, and so we want to tap into that as best we can. So our traditional owner groups, we've got a very good working relationship with the PCCC and the other traditional owners. So we had an addition. No, sorry, that's a misspeak on my part. Sorry. Yes. No, sorry, I misspoke. You're right. So we have an existing cultural heritage management agreement with the PCCC. There were initial surveys that were done in 2018. They were further done in 2021, and we've had an expansion of those surveys done just in January this year, in 2025. There was one small find on the site and was designated very minor, and basically we've committed to keep working with the PCCC on monitoring works during construction, particularly to see if anything does get identified. We're also working with them and starting to explore being able to look at employment opportunities and other services that we need on site. So things like offset management plans. There's very granular work that needs to be looked at there. Weed control, pest control. So basically starting right at the ground level and working our way up and see what we can put in place. Transmission is obviously a very important part of these projects. It's a very large part of it and is something that needs to come first for the project. So the illustration that shows on site there has the transmission lines crossing the site, and it's just an illustration showing the power line cut-in that will come across with the substation being built in the green box there, and then our substation on the outside of Powerlink in the blue. We've done a huge amount of work with Powerlink and AEMO. We are almost at the point of having our 534 letter issued to us, and so that's basically the technical approval from AEMO and Powerlink saying that they accept all the configurations of the project. So that's a project that's nearly 2 years long. It's a very, very hard process to get yourselves through, and so we've got very good consultants. We've done a massive amount of work with AEMO and put that together. Powerlink are working on their scoping and CapEx quotes at the moment, and we're hoping to get an update on that in the next month or so from Powerlink. So ideally, we're working through to have the final approval for that connection later in the year, so in the middle of the year. One of the things we're waiting for is our EPBC approval, which is our environmental approval. Powerlink needs to follow that. We can't accept the Powerlink connection until we've got our EPBC approval through from the federal government. This is just another illustration showing on the right-hand side, the pink line showing the cut-in into the existing transmission lines coming into the substation. These are a little bit of technical drawings, but basically shows the outline of what the substation will look like coming across into our substation on our sides, and that's a transformer that then steps the voltage down, and then the battery layout sitting to the north of the substation. Our EPBC I've mentioned, so a huge amount of work has gone into this process at the moment. So DQ is the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Wildlife and Water, if I remember correctly. And so that's the federal government department that you make the application to. So the project was declared a controlled action, and we referred that to DQ in the beginning of last year. And we've worked with DQ and have received back PER, some public environmental report questions that we needed to address. So nothing controversial in that submission. We had to address our soil and erosion impact on the Great Barrier Reef, which was negligible. However, we've got to go away and get a whole lot of flooding reports and very sort of complex reporting and studies done behind that, and also addressing the species on site that I've mentioned. So we've been able to put a very good response back to them. That is with the federal government at the moment, so that was submitted at the beginning of December. That is our process that we're waiting on at the moment. So there are federal elections coming that we all know about. So our DQ review process, unfortunately, this step in the process has no statutory timeframe that they need to reply to us by. So we are, while we're asking regularly, how are we going? We're not getting anything back from DQ at the moment, which is unfortunate. So that's somewhat of a political process, but that's something that we can't control and we're waiting on at the moment. Further status, our PPA, so our power purchase agreements. So one of the key exercises that you need to go through is securing the revenue for these sort of projects. So obviously very large capital commitments that are required. And we are working on securing those PPA processes. Some contracts, some of those are with some of the larger local industrial participants. Some of them are with other companies as well. But ultimately, you're talking about a financial product as opposed to the physical delivery of electricity. Obviously, we'll plug into the grid, into the national electricity market, and then these financial products become an interaction between two companies that are away from the physical delivery of power. But they're a key element from the bankability of these projects and being able to get the required bank debt. I mentioned the EPC and the equipment supply. So obviously there's the very large part of the project that we realistically we need to secure from overseas. So that's the battery and the PV arrays. Where we can, we want to plug into the local network of suppliers. So there's a huge amount of equipment that's required. There's a huge amount of services that are required. So things like fencing, weed control I mentioned, ground clearing, ground preparation. And as I said, Gladstone's got a great network of companies that can provide those services, and we're working through being able to access that at the moment. Here's just a quick summary of our external consultants that we've got helping us. So at the top is CQ Group, so Patrice Brown's here with me this morning. So Patrice and the guys at CQ are helping us from a community engagement point of view. The rest of them, they're our technical advisors, EPEC for our consulting, Two Rods for our environmental piece, Vision Infra for our development approval and other broad infrastructure advising, and it is a very big process. So just in summary, the project's in a late stage of approval across the board. We're trying to coordinate all the pieces to bring it together. Elements Green is heavily committed to this project. We want to see it succeed. To date, we've spent in excess of $40 million on this project, so it's a significant capital commitment that we've made. It will be nearly $2 billion by the time we build this project. and we are very keen to get this moving. So our next steps for us, the key bit we're waiting for, I mentioned our EPBC approval. We can try and pressure that as much as we can, but we need to just ride with the process. So financially, we can ride that out. That's not a problem for us. However, it's just something we cannot control. I mentioned our DA time extension, so that request has come into council now. We're working with the planning guys on getting that assessed and approved. And our progress will continue. We'll keep developing this project, and ideally, we're in construction in next year, and we're in operation by the middle of 28. So it's a big project. There's lots of logistics, but it's an exciting opportunity for us, and we're really keen to keep working on it.
Beauty. Thanks, Toby. Councillor Churchill has a question, and then Councillor Wagner.
Thanks, Mayor Matt. Thanks, Toby. Appreciate the update. We all appreciate the update. Best wishes. I suppose now that we have a new proponent, just perhaps go back from the questions to the Rods Bay proponents does Elements Green plan to have a community investment program relevant to benefits that could come? I've got a couple of quick ones. Hopefully they're a simple answer for you. Community investment program that nearly all of our corporates actively participate in our region.
Answer's yes, and so we're working on those solutions at the moment. So I would say that we would look to on a relative basis be at least matching the other development funds that are being made available. It's one of the ways that these projects participate in the community. It's very easy to be able to build these projects, and some of the benefits don't reach the local community, and we're working to make sure that doesn't happen, that we're able to participate.
We understand that, but there's impacts and then there's benefits. So as long as the community are engaged with that, I think that's good.
Yes.
You mentioned the Live DA. You mentioned the EPBC Act, which is quite a powerful act.
Yes.
You've mentioned it a number of times. You mentioned the koala habitat, the glider habitat.
Yes.
Is there any engagement that you may have had with our Gladstone Conservation Council, Anna Hitchcock, or anybody in that particular area? And I understand it's got to go through the federal government process, but has there been any engagement at all with our Conservation Council?
Not yet. So under Patrice's advisement, that's something that we're looking to commence, and in order to be able to work through that offset management plan. So that forms part of the broader ongoing management of the site, and so that's a plan that's under development at the moment. So I mentioned two, Roger, our environmental consultants. We've put together quite a detailed offset management plan, and so we're looking to actually roll that out into an executable plan, because that will be a commitment for the life of the project.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you ever so much. And the other one, I suppose, Red Hill Road. You mentioned Red Hill Road, so I suppose it's going to have a huge impact on that road.
Yes.
Have we conditioned that? Is that a Gladstone Regional Council condition?
I'm sure there is.
I'd just like to get an idea that there's a condition put in place, and how receptive are you to that condition? We've just done a good tour of our region. We've seen the impact of roads in the southern end of our region yesterday, and we certainly wouldn't like to think that it would be, and I know it won't be, perhaps a negative legacy, but we'd like to think that perhaps Red Hill Road could be kept at least at its current standard, or if not improved quite dramatically.
I would say it will be improved dramatically. It needs to be for us to be able to deliver the equipment to site. So one of the design features of this is a complete rebuild of the road. We need to do that. There's a couple of creek crossings and culverts that we need to rebuild into appropriate weight-bearing capacities. Some of the corners need to be corrected so that trucks can get around them. But certainly from the point of view of the condition of the road currently, it will be a massive improvement on what's there.
Terrific. Thank you. And I suppose my last one, which is always topical, is John Bell going to continue to run his cattle thereafter?
Yes, that's our intention. So
because that seems to be one of the points of conjecture, is that it's good beef-producing land or agricultural land, but and then all of a sudden you build a solar farm and you've lost that potential for rural benefit. But you're saying that it can continue.
So there are certain rules that will get imposed on us by the EPBC approvals that come through for us. So some of those habitat areas will have restrictions put on them as part of that offset management plan. So where we're able to, our intention is to have, and John is very keen and amenable to continuing that, so to continue his southern paddock activities. But yes, where we're able to, we will continue having the cattle on our property.
Yeah, thank you. Elements Green could be a model for others. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, thank you very much for the update. That's great. Just a few questions, if you don't mind. In terms of the panels, I see they're all on the low-level agricultural land at the moment, not on the, I suppose, the little peaks. How much of this land is under panel? Like, how many acres would the panels cover?
Under the panels, it'll be, so out of the total of 2,800 hectares, it'll be about 1,100 hectares.
Okay, excellent. And also, in terms of how the risks, you would have a risk management plan in there.
Yes.
What would be the key risk that you've identified there, and how have you mitigated that?
As in the key risk for the project once it's operating. Certainly, I think land management is a key piece, so maintaining appropriate fire setbacks, being able to maintain the weed security, pest security across sites. So they're key activities that we're very aware of. So, you know, rat's tail grass is a big issue in the area. We want to make sure that does not become a feature of our site. It's not there at the moment, which is a credit to John and his activities on there. But also the pig population is a big issue in the area. So, you know, it comes down to those very sort of granular, so on the ground issues. Fire setbacks are a big thing for us to think about. So both from the point of view of our fire protection mechanisms in that, you know, it's an industrial site at that point, so we need to make sure that we've got appropriate mitigation exercises in place so that if we get hit by lightning or something like that and it triggers a fire, how do we deal with that? But then also from a bushfire risk coming in from the national park or the other areas around it. So part of that offset management plan and the land management exercise is, you know, maintaining those fire breaks, making sure that the fencing we've got is appropriate and maintained well, and all of that features as part of the package of that ongoing land management exercise. So, you know, it's a big exercise that it's not a set and forget exercise. You know, it is active that needs to happen for the life of the project.
Cool. I notice also looking at the boundaries there, you're bordering the boundaries, particularly to the north and south, and not quite on the east. Are there any houses adjacent to where those panels will be? And if so, what have you done to discuss that with the neighbours?
So we've discussed it directly with each of the neighbours. So to the north is John's property. So his house is quite a way away.
Yep.
And to the south, there's actually the development approval commencement process for another project to the south of us. Right. So, you know, one of the features of the site is effectively there's only one house that can actually see the site. We've been up and spoken.
Is that John's? Or?
No, it's to the west of us. Their name just escapes me.
Probably don't need to mention it.
No,
that's fine. But have been and spent a lot of time at kitchen tables, rolling maps out and showing people what we're doing, giving them the chance to ask questions and answer them. And so far the engagement has been very positive.
Okay, so at this stage you don't expect that that particular resident will have an issue with this?
No, as I said, they've actually welcomed another proponent onto their property to do what they hope will be a similar project.
Okay, excellent. The other thing too, the road there, the Red Hill Road, in the past, and it's probably still there somewhere, there were plans to have a road perhaps in the future go through to Agnes Water, a shortcut along that route there. I'm just wondering whether there would be an opportunity, if you're upgrading that road there, that might be the catalyst for trying to get that route through to Agnes Water. I think that would be a great community benefit.
I mean, that's well to the south of our property. I think where you're talking about where Red Hill Road veers to the east.
Yeah.
So that certainly hasn't been discussed with us, but I think that would need to actually cut through the national park.
It does, and that's what I think
yeah,
really
right, okay.
the
So
issue is. But I think in all these, it'd be, I don't know, I just see that there's probably a real opportunity there. But anyway, that's probably just me talking. The other thing is, in terms of the lifespan of all the equipment on there, your panels, the batteries too, what is their lifespan, and at the end of that, what are your plans to sort of dispose or remove and dispose of those? Like, what happens in the long term? Not that they just get left in situ and they become an environmental issue.
The overarching design is basically this: everything can be removed. So there is minimal amount of concrete or any underground construction or anything like that that gets left behind. So essentially everything is above ground, and some of the cabling and things like that will be trenched and put underground, but it's removable. So the piling for the solar, for example, can be removed out of the ground. The substation, at that point at the end of life, the substation would not belong to us, it would belong to Powerlink. So if our project was to cease to exist in 30 or 40 years, it would be, Powerlink would probably want to have a future use of that substation to have other projects or a replacement for our project in one form or another being able to plug into that substation. So the substation I would describe as being a fairly permanent installation into the power lines. That's one of the, the Powerlink don't do cut-ins to their lines as a light exercise. It's a significant exercise for them because it basically produces a cut in the power line that's a weakness from a potential fault point. So they try to avoid it where they can. That's why for the bulk of these projects, they're all trying, so other projects are all trying to get into the existing substations. So up at Calliope and the areas around here. And so, there's somewhat of a land grab or land race, if you like, to get into the existing substation.
Yeah.
So one of the key benefits we've got on our site is we don't need to cross someone else's land to get access to the transmission line. It's on our site. And Powerlink acknowledge that as an advantage of being able to construct the substation the way that they can at the moment. So, look, it's a complex exercise. As we move through the life of the project, there's a massive amount of capital that gets spent on effectively rebuilding the project as you go, because there's degradation that happens in the way it performs and everything like that. So panels will get replaced, parts of the batteries will get replaced as it goes. So the theory is that, as you get sort of, when it's originally constructed and it's got like a 30-year production life, the expectation is that the project would operate well beyond that time frame because of the maintenance capital that gets spent on it.
Yeah, okay, but I suppose ultimately, is there anything in your planning now that does commit to removing it at the end? I know it can be, but will it be?
The design of it is in place so that it can be, and that's part of the feature of the environmental approval that we go through. So effectively, it's, in theory, the site can be returned to its current state.
But there's not a commitment.
Well, certainly from the point of view of being able to, operate the project beyond its design life, that is an ideal feature. Ultimately, if we want to remove coal from the grid, we need these projects to replace it. So the design life is put together at 30 years. That's based on its initial construction period. But realistically, we are going to need these projects to keep running beyond what is their initial design life.
Can I ask, when you say you're replacing panels,
Yes.
how do you dispose of those now? Like, over the history, like, what do you do with them? Do you just go and take them to the waste transfer, like the landfill, or?
Unfortunately, a large part of the equipment ends up in landfill, and that's just a feature of the process at the moment. People are working on being able to more efficiently recycle, because there's lots of valuable materials that are inside those panels, and so that is a live exercise that the market is undertaking at the moment as a general thing, what to do with this equipment at the end of its life.
Excellent. No worries, thank you for that.
No, that's
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor McClintock, then Patrick.
Thank you, Toby. Councillor Wagner asked a bunch of my questions there. No, that's perfect. I guess the only follow-up for the questions along Red Hill Road was you speak about upgrading it and the culverts and bits and pieces in there. It's quite a long road. It goes all the way through to the highway there. How much of the road are you actually going to be responsible for upgrading? Is it all the way through, or is it a little section at the end?
Nope.
When you say Red Hill Road, what is that?
It will be from the highway crossing at Borrowan all the way out the side. So it'll be along its entire length.
Brilliant. That is great news. The other one, which is along the same lines as what Councillor Wagner was just trying to get there, and I think if I can clarify probably what the question was, what assurances does our community have if you were to up and walk away, which is not the plan and not at all something that we're hoping happens along the process for any development, but what assurances, I guess, can we give to community that there's not going to be a whole heap of infrastructure left up in their backyards?
A key feature of the environmental approvals that we've got to put in place is having that end-of-life plan put in place, as well as the ongoing offset management plan that is, and that's a commitment we make to the federal government as part of them granting that approval. There is bonding and security that we will need to post. Yep. So, there's a significant financial commitment that we need to make as part of that exercise as well. So I guess, it's, that financial commitment, I guess, is the stick, if you like.
Yep.
But from the point of view of being able to continue this sort of activity, as I showed you on the map, we've got a long history of doing these projects. The reason we can do that is we do them well, and we trade on our reputation of being able to put those exercises in place. So, if we were to be walking away from those exercises and not making those commitments whole, we wouldn't be able to continue in what we're trying to do, and that's certainly not our intention. Australia's a new market for us, for Elements Green. This is our first project. It's not the last one. We've got other projects under development in other regions and focused on Queensland. So, having that sort of reputation and ability to be able to operate is a key thing for us. So it's something we take very seriously.
That makes sense. And I guess you touched on it there, that it's a new thing for a lot of people. A lot of community do not understand the process, and I'm sure there's been quite a lot of hoops and jumps and signatures that you've had to do along the process. So I guess that's our role, is to make sure that community is informed and understands some of those assurances and some of those things like bonds that are in place, so that this isn't just something that can be left behind. So appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick, then Cameron.
Thank you. Good morning, Toby. Thank you for your presentation to us this morning. Just a couple of questions. I noted that if this project was to go ahead, you're looking at having a workforce of 450 to 550 jobs that would be created. What would be the level of commitment of employing local for that project, knowing that it's quite a large number of people that you're needing for that construction?
It is, and that that number is a temporary number as well. Obviously there's a very large and concentrated construction process that needs to happen. So from a permanent basis, we would expect to have 20 to 30 employees in and around the site, from a maintenance point of view and a equipment and site maintenance and all the other topics that I've touched on. Our planning would be to use local people as much as possible, but it is a temporary exercise that we need to go through. So unfortunately it's not a sustainable level of employment, and we're at the beginning of that planning of that process, and as I said, we're plugging into the GEA and the Chamber of Commerce and local community groups as much as we can. Because those sort of temporary arrangements creates all sorts of pressure on housing and all those sort of problems in logistics and transport and things like that. And we're very mindful of that, and we need to go through and actually develop those plans more fully. So we're working on that at the moment. Those plans are not set yet, but our intention will be to use that local content as much as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Just from an efficiency point of view, it makes sense as well.
That's. I think it's good for our region to know what workforce you're looking at having during construction, but also what is ongoing, what is the sustainable employment for projects like this. So I think that's really important to note. The other question I was wanting to ask you, you were saying, or you mentioned in your presentation that a lot of the components are coming from overseas. Can you explain what type of BESS you're looking at putting into this project? Is that something that you can talk about?
In the BESS?
Yeah.
So it'll be a lithium-based battery product, as all of the installations in Australia are at the moment. So that's a changing. It's a changing market at the moment. There's different technologies being investigated from people, and there's certainly different providers that are coming into the market. We're engaging with all of them at the moment, but it will be a lithium battery.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Always going last a bit difficult, mate. It's all pretty much been covered. Just getting down to the batteries and their storage. Is all the storage to that battery specifically and totally from the panels, or do you draw from the grid as well?
No, it will be drawn from the grid. So the way we've all heard lots of comments around this hybrid approval process that Powerlink are going through at the moment, and with AEMO. So basically trying to plug these projects into the grid. At the moment, the way they're dealing with those hybrid rules, and certainly a feature of our project, it's 4 separate connection points based on those existing transmission lines. However, it's a single GPS or a generator performance standard, which is the technical set of rules that the project has to behave to. So there are 4 separate connection points, 2 for the battery and 2 for the PV.
Okay.
So they are connected from those rules, bringing them together, but they are physically separated from the way the grid plugs into them. So there's 4 separate meter points. So in order to have the battery charge off the solar, it would effectively be the solar into the grid and back into the battery, although it is happening within our substation.
So in times of minimal use outside of the peak area of the use, that grid power could be drawn back to your battery?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So clearly you would buy that amount of electricity in.
Absolutely. So, and there's a multitude of revenue streams that these that the batteries are able to utilise. There's various network and network security supply, so voltage and frequency supply services and everything like that goes into that. So often that is very small volumes of the battery coming in and out of the market, so that's controlled by effectively a robot that does that. But then there's the other side of it being the arbitrage side of things, where it's able to actually draw power in at times of hopefully negative prices or very low prices, and then being able to store that power and bring it back into the night time when demand is expected to be higher.
So clear that the price that you would pay to bring the power out would be less than what you charge when it goes back into the grid.
As the basis of making revenue, absolutely. That's
Yeah,
the name of the game.
Fair enough too. There's no impact on the national park. You're very close to a national park there.
No. No. So we're set back from our boundary along the national park. No, so there'll be
Absolutely not.
no impact.
Okay. It generates, I looked at this as a figure, that's pretty impressive. It'll generate equivalent to power to supply 200,000 households, which, and that's significant. We use a lot of power here. And just as a comparison, when the Boyne smelter goes to full production, which it can't do because it can't have enough power, it draws in excess of the total power for the Gold Coast City.
Yes.
It's massive. That's something I heard some time ago, and I use it quite regularly without any intelligence because I don't know whether it's right or not. But I was at a function there the other night, and there was a chappie there from Boyne Smelters, and I put that to him. I said, "Is that correct? Is it uses around about the same power as Gold Coast City?" And that's not at full power either. He said, "Yeah, plus some." So that's pretty extensive. So, is there been any approaches from any of the high industry users to tap into that power, or is that's just an Energex thing?
No. So I mentioned the PPA process, the power purchase agreement process that we're undertaking at the moment, and so that is some of those larger local participants are the active groups that we're talking with as well. So, those power purchase agreements are a financial product, so it's not a direct supply of power. So they draw from the grid and we provide power into the grid, and it becomes a whole balancing exercise that, that PowerLink administers. That power purchase agreement becomes a financial settlement exercise between the two counterparts. So effectively it's a risk trading exercise as opposed to physical electricity.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis, then back to Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Toby. Obviously, this came to council before I was a councillor, so I just had one quick question. The land that the actual site will be on, do we know what grade of ag land that was, that the site, your component will be built on? I know the gentleman's still going to, run cattle,
Yes.
but the actual site, do we know what grade of ag land that was originally?
I believe it's a relatively low grade, but I don't know the specifics.
All right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Happy to move that the deputation from Elements Green be received, and best wishes. Hopefully you'll be successful with your extension of the live DA.
Thank you. I'll get a second and then I might have some questions. Thank you, Councillor Holzheimer. And I do. On the community benefit fund, I see that, are you familiar with the project, the Great North Road Solar Project, Elements Green? Is that yours?
No, that's not ours.
Okay. Must be another one. I don't think it's Australian. It looks like it was a European, but I can't find anywhere on the website that highlights the community benefit. I know it certainly says that you're going to support the community, and I have no doubt you will, especially with Patrice as one of your consultants. Is there like a percentage of the cost of the project of what you give back in other projects you've done? If Elements Green's been operating for 15 plus more years, or
They have. So I guess the project experience we've had is European based. So it's a different type of engagement with community groups. Over there, it's literally just not as much of a feature of the project.
in
the European markets.
Okay.
That plan has not been finalised or fully developed yet. So we'll keep developing that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. We certainly can.
No, absolutely, and that's working with Patrice and the CQ guys. It's we want to make this a meaningful development so that the community does benefit from it.
A couple more, just on the firefighting capacity, because we did have a battery project not far north of us in Bouldercombe, thank you. I was thinking Barcaldine. That was Baldy, and it caught fire not long after it was built. Fire breaks are very good. Supporting the local fire brigade is also very good. Is there dams on site that you can access water? Like, if it does catch fire, how do you put it out?
Lithium is a technology. When it does catch fire, it's a chemical fire. It's not a oxygen combustion fire.
Yeah.
So water does not help.
No.
And so in that regard,
You did say lithium battery before, sorry.
No, and all of the batteries that are in the grid are lithium based, and so adding water into the
Could be a problem.
is a problem. So basically, it's the main objective of the technology, which is changing very quickly and getting much better at it, is to identify and prevent the fire before it starts. So basically, a battery cell gets hot through whatever mechanism has not gone right in it. Now, compared to call them the previous generation of technology, the identification of that exercise is much, much better, and the solution is to physically remove that battery before it catches fire.
I was probably more thinking about if it did catch fire, the property around it could be, like, it's all grazing land. So
Yes.
if it catches fire, then the neighbouring grazing land catches fire, and how do you mitigate the neighbours' properties, houses from being burnt down? I'm sure you have that under control, but I just want to, if you can't use water on the battery, and that makes sense, but the battery fire is going to be beyond the battery and catch on to the grazing land.
Yes.
And potentially could end up people's properties. We sort of don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's multiple layers of that, having effective brakes in the first place to contain the fire. so that it does not get away into surrounding grasslands. And one of the key activities for that ongoing management of the land is fire preparation, because it's not just from inside our own property where that is a risk. We have the national park, we have surrounding areas. Bushfires are a real thing that we need to deal with in Queensland. So we need to be ready for that, and it will be part of our management plan.
Legend. And I guess the last one I have really, other than to say, when you have a community benefit program, you definitely need to include Brewarrun, the town that is closest
Yes.
to the community, not just the whole region. The whole region's great, but there should definitely be something focused for Brewarrun.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best projects that was ever supported for the LNG industry was the community centre on Curtis Island. They did lots of great projects in our community, don't get me wrong, in the city and in Calliope and in other parts of our area, but building a community centre on Curtis Island where the 3 LNG plants are was very much appreciated by the locals over there.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is just when you get to the point of when you change categories, I just hope you check our rating system, because obviously the grazing is going to be a lesser rate category than energy production. I'm just recently, in the last week, had a conversation with a proponent who was surprised that their property, which is generating, will be generating energy, was surprised at the different category of their rates.
Mm-hmm.
So just you'll notice that there'll be an increase.
No, that's
Just want you to put that into your forward planning.
yes.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors? An hour, mate. Thank you very much. There was lots of questions. As you can tell, our community is very interested in these projects, but and very supportive, but also we want to make sure that any issues are mitigated, and it looks to me like you're absolutely doing that, and you've got the A-team over there in the gallery. So thank you for joining us this morning.
No,
Cheers.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Then we have a mover and a second that the deputation be received, and I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? It's carried. He got ahead of me. I wanted to ask some questions before he did that. Thanks, Toby. Righto. Councillors, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our officers' reports. And Officer Report G4.1 is Central Queensland Regional Waste Management Plan and the implementation of that plan. And I'll hand over to the Strategic Program Lead for Waste, Chris Irving. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. This item today is regard to the development of an implementation plan to support the outcomes of the Central Queensland Regional Waste Management Plan. The regional plan was developed and being progressed by the member councils of the Central Queensland Organisation of Councils, and the progression is also supported by a regional project coordinator, which is funded by the state. The implementation plan contains a combination of individual council and regional activities, with the implementation plan progressing for endorsement to CQ ROC Board following individual council endorsement, and then provided to the state to help support and advocate for the significant actions that are required. The report provided today details individual Gladstone Regional Council and key regional activities and actions that are included in the implementation plan. And if I could present the officer's recommendation for consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, thank you, and a thorough plan, so thank you very much for that. The only, I suppose, point that I'd like to highlight is, I think, the comment about moving over to FOGO, and I just have to say that I'll be really interested to see what's happening in New South Wales, because it's being, they have to do it by a certain deadline. I do anticipate there's going to be some challenges, particularly because in an area like ours, where you do have a lot of people not accessing the collection services now, so there's a bit of an inequity in that, and probably I do think that some people in the outlying areas that are already doing organics in terms of composting and some options there may not be keen to be paying the extra fee. So I just ask that we do really consider that and see whether there is an alternative to that when we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wagner. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Holsheimer.
Thanks, Chris. So from reading the implementation plan that you've given today, this actually feeds in, the strategic workshop that we did actually feeds into this. So we've had input in that way. some other conversations that interesting Councillor McClintock and I have had since doing the strategic planning day was around how a lot of the work we do is actually reactive. It's at the back end. So it's once the rubbish has already been or the waste has already been produced, and I would love for us to have more conversations or to look at that higher level, and I know we're doing that through advocacy pieces. How do we actually change at the beginning? So people are buying smarter when they're buying from the shop, you know, and how we actually can do that better and have those conversations with community, not just that back end stuff. But I'm really happy to endorse the report today as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that a question or you just, no, okay. Were you moving the officer's recommendation? Okay, and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McClintock. And your question?
Thanks, Chris. I guess just to clarify, further on from that point there was probably something I was wrestling with, and we have had some conversations, is what are some of the opportunities? I know you go to a lot of different events and a lot of different I guess, conferences and understanding this waste sector. It's a very expensive part of our business, and obviously a really important part of our business. A lot of areas are not as blessed as what we are. They have very, very limited, if not no more, capacity to take on waste. We aren't in that position. We do have some capacity, I guess, left within our region for our current waste process. I guess, what are some, maybe one or two ideas that you've seen or could perhaps suggest for ideas on some of that pre-stuff, some of that, how do we deal with it going in, and how can we help reduce that process and get ahead, I guess, of that need to process the waste so much at the back end?
There's probably two. There's probably one within our control, and what the Central Queensland Regional Plan really talks about as a lever is education. Education is one of those significant levers to help educate our ratepayers for what they are purchasing and how they manage that at the source. If we manage waste at the source when it's going into a bin, that significantly helps us on our back end. The other aspect is probably something that we can influence but may not be directly in our control, is around some of the challenging items, some of the things that we do receive through our streams. So the type of packaging, the way it's packaged, the way things are manufactured to assist the processing or the recovery of those things as part of the process. That represents something that's more at a state and federal level, so it's something we can influence, but there's probably two there. One we can directly influence, which is education and supporting our ratepayers, and the other one is something that we can advocate strongly for. I know conversations recently with you, you spoke about most weeks having only a bag of rubbish to put in your personal bin at home. I think that's waste goals right there. We're currently doing a clean-up of our house, and I am well over my bin. I've got a pile ready for next week's bin. So it's quite a serious but also achievable process to implement personally. And I've really kind of wrestled with that, I guess, personally over this last week or two since you spoke about that, and I'm like, how do I get rid of more of this waste? So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, just while I'm on it too, I thought there are people listening here. The workshop was really great, obviously, and it gave us a really good insight. But I'm wondering if you can share with our residents the percentage of contamination currently in our bin. Like, we're talking about when it's contaminated, obviously it costs us because we can't dispose of it or recycle some of it like we can. So what percentage of our waste currently is contaminated with the wrong rubbish?
So if I could talk to the recycling bin currently, we recently did an audit, and our contamination rates in our recycling bin are upwards of 35%. So in a regional area like ours, we would probably expect to see around 20%. So we are higher than our regional counterparts.
And are there any specific contaminants in there that, you can identify for residents saying, oh, I didn't realise that was a contaminant?
Probably the biggest learning that's jumped out so far from that audit is our community is bagging their recycling. Feeding through and what we'll start see come through our education efforts is educating the community that just put your recycling items in your bin loosely. So if they go in a bag, when it hits the processing plant, the MRF, they'll get diverted straight to waste. So they don't rip the bags open. So that's probably a big initial message for the community is if you put in recycling in bags in your recycling bin.
Don't bag it.
Don't bag it, yeah.
Excellent. And the recycling at the moment is getting taken elsewhere too, so that's a cost as well, isn't it, that we're currently
That's right. Our processing option for the moment, we don't have one within the region. So currently it goes down to Nambour on the Sunshine Coast after it's collected.
Be great to see one in the region. But thank you very much for the report, and I look forward to rolling this out and helping educate the community too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the report. We've been talking about this for the last 4 years that I can remember, and it's really good to see this now in a collaborative way that we're addressing this rather than each individual council trying to tackle it on their own. We're doing it as a group, which makes perfect sense. I think the big thing is that the two keys out of this is having our material, the recycle stuff. We need that MRF, and that's the key to half of it. Education is a big one, and I think you've got more luck educating school kids than the general population. In my experience with, I've had short-term accommodation stuff and long-term. We find in this region here that our proportion of rental properties as opposed to owner-occupied is out of kilter with the national figures. So nationally it's about 1/3, 33%, but in Gladstone here it's 45%. These are people that don't necessarily engage in our community. They just come here for work, they're on short terms, and they don't really give much of a damn, really. So how you educate that side of it is a big problem, and that's not going to go anyway soon. So I don't know how you get around that one, but the report is very, very good, very long, big read. Yes, I'm happy to endorse that as well today. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Well, seeing as I think Councillor Wagner made a very good point about don't bag it. I think that should be definitely highlighted by our team. But what about our app? Could you tell the community a little bit about our Recycle Mate app?
Yes, I can. Councils, we've subscribed to the Recycle Mate app. Many councils have throughout Queensland, so that's we were able to achieve that through some state funding that was made available. What that is if you go to our website, or you can just download the Recycle Mate app itself on your available provider. What it is for items that you might have a question about how you dispose of them or what options are available, you can either enter that in or take a photo of it, and the program identifies those and then links you through to what you can do with that in the region. If it's something to dispose of, it'll indicate that. If there's a location, it may be a council facility or a non-council facility, it'll help to identify that as well, so that you can get that off and it's recovered and recycled as opposed to being disposed of. So it's a great app, so if everyone can use it, yep, download it and get it.
Thank you, Chris. We might as well get a bit of a plug in. At my house, my goal is to make sure that the yellow bin's not contaminated. Sometimes recycling might end up in the red bin, and I know that's not a great outcome, but I would rather that in there than contaminating the yellow one. So, but anyway, ultimately, eventually we'll get it right. Thank you. Including pizza boxes, that's right. Apparently you're only allowed to put the bottom top bit in or something, I don't know. Not all of it in. You need teenagers in your house still, and there's no bits of pizza left in any of the boxes, let me tell you. All right, we have a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation. Councillor Holzheimer, Councillor McClintock, all in favour? That's carried as well. Thank you, Chris. Councillor, the next couple of items are on council appointments to committees. I can hand over to the CEO, but I'm just as happy to talk through these. Obviously, following the resignation of Councillor Goodluck, we've had a look at the committees that he was on and committees that councillors were on, and to make it fair for Councillor Cameron, to keep him very busy, we have some suggestions there. And Madam CEO, if you're happy for me to read through these, or would you like to add? No. Okay, so G 4.2 is the appointment of the Phillip Street Communities Precinct Advisory Committee, and the recommendation is to reappoint Councillor Patrick and to appoint Councillor Cameron as a replacement for Councillor Holzheimer. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Seconded, Councillor McClintock. Any discussion? All in favour? It's carried. Item 4.3 is the appointment to the Capricorn Pest Management Group, and the recommendation is to reappoint Councillor Wagner and to appoint Councillor Cameron in replacement of Councillor Holzheimer. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Patrick, seconded Councillor Wagner. Any discussion? Put the motion. All in favour? That is carried. The next is G 4.4, which is the councillor appointment to the Gladstone Regional Council State. No, that's not right. The Gladstone Regional Council. Let's just take that out. To the State Emergency Services Management Committee. I'm not sure if it's called the Gladstone Regional Council. It is? Okay. All right. We don't really want to own the State Emergency Service, but okay. Happy for the title of that management group, which Councillor Trevor was on for many years as well. But the recommendation is to appoint Councillor Cameron in replacement of Councillor Patrick. I have a mover, please. Councillor Wagner, seconded Councillor Holzheimer. All in favour? Sorry, I should have asked was there any discussion, but it didn't seem to be so far. G 4.5, which is the last one, which is the council appointment to the Regional Roads and Transport Group, and the recommendation is a little clumsy here. Let me go back, but my recommendation would be that we appoint Councillor McClintock as replacement for the Mayor and Councillor Cameron as well. Can you clarify?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Currently, we have an alternate delegate that we can, under the Constitution, which allows, so there's 2 nominations and a delegate, so if Council would like to appoint a alternate as well if the 2 delegates are unable to attend, or you may choose not to.
Well, the alternate would normally be me if they can't attend, yeah?
Previously, the mayor was required.
Sorry.
Previously, the mayor was required to be a member. That's no longer the case. So we would ordinarily have another councillor to sit in as your delegate, but there's still the opportunity to have another councillor as a delegate to fill in for either of the 2 nominated delegates if they can't attend.
And I'm still ex officio and can attend any time?
No, if you would like to attend, then you would have to have yourself as one of the appointed councillors and one of the other councillors as an alternate delegate.
Okay. I think I would like to be, and I'd still like to be able to attend, and then, but I won't, and I'll probably hand over to Councillor Cameron. But there's some particular issues, ideally, with the agenda that I see for Friday, that I'd like to have input into because of some of the items on the agenda. Did you want to speak, Councillor McClintock?
Yeah, just to clarify, we've had a bit of an update of the Constitution over the last 12 to 24 months. So there's been a few changes through that process and getting my head around those. I think there is great benefit in having you available to that space. There's a lot of history with a lot of these projects. There's a lot of context that can get missed in that room at times. So, yeah, I would like to see it set up in a way, whatever that looks like, that we could have the mayor in there should it need to happen. But obviously, Councillor Cameron being a part of that process as well.
So if that's the scenario Council would like to run with, I'd certainly recommend that the Mayor be appointed as a delegate as well as yourself, Councillor McClintock, and Councillor Cameron as an alternate. And if the Mayor was unable to attend, Councillor Cameron would then attend on your behalf.
Are you happy with that, Councillor? Yeah, and to be fair, it'll be every meeting. I've chaired the RRTG for many years before being Mayor, and since being Mayor, I think Councillor Goodluck was on there for a number of years, Councillor Trevor probably, maybe even Councillor Branthwaite was on there as well. The Mayor only needs to attend every now and again, but I do have a lot of history that I can provide, and this Friday's agenda certainly got some of it on it. Okay, so the recommendation will be to appoint Councillor McClintock, who will take over as the chair, and appoint myself, and then appoint Councillor Cameron as the alternate. Can I move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Holzheimer? Any further discussion? Put the motion. All in favour? That's carried as well. Thank you, councillors. A little bit tricky, that one. Let's move to the next item, which is councillor reports. Do we have any councillor reports? Don't think there's any written councillor reports. No? No verbal reports from councillors? No urgent business, no notices of motion, no confidential items. I'll close the meeting at 10:16 a.m. Thank you for your attendance.
you.